my name is Kathy Navakis, and I'm going to be your moderator this afternoon. And our timekeeper is Ragad, and she's sitting right in the front here. And we do have other volunteers, and when I call your name, if you could just put your hand up, we have Mary and John and Zenaida, and I think that's it for our volunteers today. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and the many Indigenous people of these regions. The three long-standing Indigenous groups of this region are Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape. I'd also like to recognize the three First Nations communities neighboring the city of London: Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We recognize that we, as the Urban League members and community, have a role to play in relationship building and reconciliation, and that reconciliation has to be more than about talk. It has to be based on action. Language. The Urban League of London is hosting all candidates meetings with partner organizations from across London, including ANOVA, Climate Action London, Inclusive Economy London and Region, London Cycle Link, London Environmental Network, London Intercommunity Health Centre, London School of Racialized Leaders, London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership, Pillar Nonprofit Network, and Young London. We are hosting 14 meetings throughout London before the municipal election scheduled for October 24th. A volunteer-run committee was struck by the Urban League and has been meeting since January to organize these meetings. They've been composed of individuals from the various organizations across the city and set the goal of encouraging participation in local government and the political process. The committee has invited all candidates to participate. Along with the partner organizations, the committee created a list of important questions to ask of each candidate. We request that everyone here today be respectful to the candidates and your fellow audience members. We should also like to encourage those of you in our audience who use social media to tag the Urban League on Facebook and Instagram and use the hashtag LDNVotes. There we go. We'd also like to thank the London Public Library for providing this meeting space today. We also want to thank the London Community Foundation for sponsoring these meetings and remind the audience of the 2021 release of the Vital Signs report, Be the Change. Vital Signs is a biannual check-in on how we are faring on issues that are significant to the well-being and quality of life. The latest report focuses on making systemic change by coming together to participate in collective action. The report is available at bethechangelondon.ca. We want to extend a big thank you to Rogers TV for filming this event for broadcast. So if you couldn't be here, tell your friends. They'll be broadcast on Rogers. The ground rules for today. We've already drawn the candidates' names to determine speaking order. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening introduction. The first candidate then will draw from the box a question. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes. 2 minutes to provide their answer and 2 minutes to rebut, because we only have 2 candidates here today. This will continue for a number of questions, and then we will go to questions that have been emailed in. And then if there's questions from the audience, we will also have those. Each candidate will draw at least 3 questions from this box. Candidates, please be sure to speak clearly into the microphones, and you can remove them from the stands if you need to. Once every candidate has completed several questions from the box, we will go to the write-in, and then we will go to the audience. Timekeeping, how this works. The timekeeper has 3 cards: a green card, a yellow card, and a red card. When your time begins, the green card will be held up. At the 30-second point from the end time, the yellow card is held up. The red card is held up when you must immediately end your answer. My job is to move everything along to ensure that each candidate has been treated fairly and has the same amount of time to answer questions. All candidates were provided with the questions in advance of these meetings to afford them the opportunity to prepare their responses. I will read the questions as they are drawn. Before we begin, I'd also like to just acknowledge our school board trustee members or candidates who are running. And we have Christine Morgan and Lorianne Pizzolota at the back, and feel free to chat with them when this debate is over. Okay, would you like to do your opening statements, please? And we will start with Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who joined us physically in person today and those who will view this later at home. I'm Elizabeth Peloza. I'm your current Ward 12 City Councillor. I'm a mom of 3. I live within the ward. Many of you have gotten to know me over the years. I love London. It's where I've raised my family. It's the communities that we walk in, our trails and neighborhoods that we go through. And it's the work that we do and the things we identify together that we want to see as a vision for London as we work together to make the city that we want to stay in. And especially for me as a mom, that I would love my kids to stay in and hopefully go to have their education and come back to when all things are said and done as they grow, that they're always proud of where they came from. And regardless of what they choose to do, they always felt safe and had a really great opportunity to have the opportunities before them in a sense of opportunity and just who they can be, that they can be so safely within our community. It's been a pleasure, as I said, to serve you and have been out on the campaign trail, knocking on doors and hearing what the ward has to say, recognizing we do have the 3rd largest geographical ward and the 3rd largest in population. So we have a lot of voices to consider and different community concerns regardless of who you are. Safety always seems to come up in traffic, but just realizing different communities have different needs and different geographical areas have different needs too. So making sure that we hear those and we can action those accordingly at City Hall with our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
All right. Not really sure that I need the microphone, given the fact that I usually do carry my voice. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Alexander Main. I am currently running for council, Ward 12. And I want to start by thanking the Urban League. Thank you for setting this up. You know, events like this, as we discussed earlier, are important, giving people an opportunity to see the candidates, hear the candidates, and question the candidates. Secondly, I really want to thank all of you. You know, you are what make London what it is. You are the most important part of this city. And for the people listening at home, watching at home, thank you to you as well, because your commitment, your desire to hear us speak really does give me refreshed hope for the future of the community. Finally, I want to thank Elizabeth. For the last 4 years, she's worked within our community to represent us in Ward 12. And let's face it, there have been challenges over the last 4 years. It has not been easy. Wouldn't be easy for anybody. So we do owe her a thanks. Now that may seem a little strange to everybody sitting here going, well, you're kind of sitting next to her, challenging her. But that's because I believe we deserve more. We deserve to be heard when we have problems. We deserve actions or answers when we have issues. And most importantly, we deserve a council that understands the mandate is not limited to the 4 walls of City Hall. Like many residents of Ward 12, I have had problems in the last few years, and I brought them up to City Hall, but I've had lack of response, solutions, and empathy has left me feeling frustrated and disconnected from the place I call home. We need change, not promise, as we move forward within our community. So on October 24th, please remember to vote and vote for Alex Main. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Now we're going to draw our questions. I guess I'll go this way so I don't trip on any cords. Elizabeth, you get to draw the first one. Thanks. London's unemployment rate hit 6.1% this past July. High job vacancy rates remain, along with a lack of skilled workers or skill mismatch in the city. How do you plan to fill this gap?
Thank you for that question. And as we talk about economic prosperity and employment in our city, everyone wants an opportunity to have a good paying job that's not contract work. And we always want our elected officials to work together to bring more jobs to the city. This council has been doing just that. Our industrial areas are filling in quite nicely on the east end of town. But we have an issue. when we do this, that we need to recognize that sometimes in order to get to those jobs, you need a way to get there. And if there's not adequate public transit on a reliable schedule going to these underserviced areas, some people who are looking for those jobs just can't get there. We have wonderful training partners in town with Goodwill and Pathways who have been training people who can do so quickly in response to immediate needs that we hear back from employers of what they need for skill sets, who can respond to the market quite quickly. We have trade schools in town and we have Fanshawe College. These are all partners who are able to respond quickly. Western University is also here, but university degrees take a little bit longer to crank out, so that's foreseeing and where we're going. So, and certainly during the pandemic, some of the employment is people would like jobs, just some are caring for elders, some are caring for children who've stayed home, and some have health concerns or are immunocompromised and can't participate in the labor force as they would normally would at this time. So hoping as we emerge from the COVID pandemic that we're mindful of those things and that we can see those employment rates creep back up and be glad for the jobs that we have in London in a diverse field of opportunities.
Thank you. Alex?
Perfect. Like Elizabeth, I do agree with the fact that the City of London has a problem. It has a problem where it gets to work. It has difficult time to actually reach the jobs that they need to reach. We have a struggle. And one of the things that we need to start doing a little better is community level training or retraining programs that are not difficult to access or attend. I deal with unemployed people all the time. I hire people all the time. That's part of my responsibility in my job. And one of the things that I often find is the fact that people are frustrated. They can't get to work. Why do they want to go to work? They are sitting there where they don't have the necessary education. Whatever happened to the idea of community-sponsored job fairs? Why are companies being left alone to do this work themselves? We talk about partnership. Partnership goes from the roots up. We need to understand that we need to work with our employers. We need to bring them quality candidates, provide them a way to get to the jobs that they need. And we need to continue to do that in a way that actually makes sense to people. The pandemic raised a lot of issues. Every employer out there is struggling with the fact of trying to find people. And I have to pose the question, how is the city truly helping to get them skilled people to work? I know I hire a lot of people. My company hires a lot of people. I haven't had the city help me. It hasn't helped my company. So we need to get on the ground, working with the employers, finding out what specifically they need and how the city can actually help them.
Okay, thank you. And then Alex, it's pollution of the Thames River is a complex problem that includes raw sewage being dumped during high rainfalls, phosphorus leaching into the river causing algae blooms in Lake Erie, and tons of garbage going into the river and contaminating the water source of neighboring First Nations communities. What, if anything, will you do to address this complex pollution problem?
I think we need to start by the fact of looking back on a $285 million plan that the City of London came up with years ago. We need to look back on that and we need to figure out where we are in that process, because I can tell you honestly, the Thames is a problem. I know, I always screw it up, thank you. That's why you don't bring your significant other to the debate. She corrects you while you're sitting there. We need to start looking at the fact of where and what are we going to do, and we need to start working together to try and figure out how we are going to address this issue. We may need to tighten the regulations on fertilizer application. We may have to start talking about how our waste bags are disposed of. We may even turn around and have to change the common garbage dump spots and change them from not getting into the system. We may have to put more garbage cans out there. The city's plan that they put in place to spend $285 million is there. But why is it moving so slowly? Why, after so many years, are we still actually sitting there having a conversation about the pollution of the river, we'll call it, because apparently I would screw that one up. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
Thank you for the question and recognizing that the environment is one of the key pillars of my platform, that this is a broad question as realizing there's many kinds of pollution coming into our water system. The city has their Greenway water treatment plant that we managed to get a huge funding from the government for, that we invested in the plant, which resulted in energy savings of millions of dollars, which we then reinvested back into the same plant and program for we can keep expanding what we're doing. The City of London is currently working away a little bit more slowly than I'd appreciate, but we still have 13 kilometers of combined storms, water, and sewage to separate, which when we have those high rainfall events and everything comes in quickly, for those 13 kilometers that we haven't separated yet, that's when we see the partially treated discharge into the Deschkenziebing, being the Thames River. So that's what we're still working to correct. That normally coincides with the separation of the sewer system, hydro, and other things in the ground. So that's our big replacements that we see when you see your roads being torn up. Ward 12 doesn't have many of those, but in the older areas of the city and downtown, that's a lot of what you're separating and why that construction takes longer. As someone who serves on one of the water boards in town, algae blooms absolutely is an issue. And the more issues we have in our water, the more it costs in treatment costs to keep it treated and acceptable for our use. We're lucky to have the Antler River Cleanup, being a community group that does many cleanups of the river, and the London Clean and Green program we do in the spring, and neighboring First Nations having safe drinking water, have worked with our member parliament to make sure that the program can be expanded and can have what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, it's your turn to draw.
I don't know what we have for health and safety coverage.
Yeah, no, not insured. What would you do to improve access and affordability of housing and encourage developers to participate and contribute to a solution? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
This is a big question. Housing is a big issue in the city. Part of it is recognizing that the South End of the city in Ward 12 hasn't had new apartment buildings built here in over 30 years. We tend to see new single-family homes, a little bit of townhomes being built out in our area, but this one is new to us as we see new development coming to the South End. Traditionally, it's been the North and the West. As the planning applications come into the city, if they're for Ward 12, I meet with every developer. If they do pre-community consultation meetings, I'm right there for them. I let each developer know what the attributes are of the neighborhoods they're looking to move into, of what I've heard as concerns and what I'm hearing from citizens of what they need. A lot of the times, 1 and 2 bedroom units will get built, but residents are asking for 3s as well. So we can have the complete neighborhoods. If you love your neighborhood and you're aging out of your home, you can still stay and still have the extra couple of rooms for family to stay with you. If you're not quite to home ownership yet, or it's a condo that you want to own, that's still within the community you want, as we do have great green spaces and community facilities like the one we're sitting in. I talk with the developers about the frustrations of what we're seeing, our shared vision for the city, to see if they are like-minded and going to be partners, and asking for them of what their frustrations are with the city. I'm not here to serve developers by any means, but if there's ways that we can work together more efficiently, recognizing these planning applications can take years in red tape to come forward and back and forth talks with the city of, is there a way to expedite this to make those permitting and planning processes faster and more efficient, because it's getting shovels in the ground to get people into those homes and heads on the pillows faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Well, I think we can all agree that affordable housing is something that it's huge and it's an issue. Talking to a gentleman today, he bought his home for $100,000 30 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. And now it's valued at over $600,000. So when you look at the idea and the concept about affordable housing and encouraging developers to participate and contribute to the solution, we have to ask ourselves, what are we prepared to do to get this done? It's not a small problem. Let's face the reality. This is one of the biggest problems that London is facing right now, affordable housing. And what's affordable housing to you may be a little bit different to that new startup person. It's a challenging situation, and we have to be looking at builders. Maybe we have to look at tax incentives for them. Maybe we have to break it down a little bit better for them. Maybe we have to put a little bit of pressure on the developers to create more affordable housing. I read an article recently about the fact that in London, many low costs, low income groups are talking about the fact that the developers themselves have a lot of control over our city. They turn around and they are managing the affordable housing. I don't know about you, but somebody who is in the business of making profit isn't going to just turn around and just be like, nah, it's a good idea. Let's just make affordable housing. That's where city council comes into play. It is our responsibility and our duty to step up, stand up, and to be taken notice for the fact that we want affordable housing. And we have to define what that affordable housing is. Yeah, we may upset a few developers.
Thank you.
Oh, my turn, huh?
Yeah, it's double up. Cheers.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question. The current city council was the first in the country to add in a pillar to the city's strategic plan that specifically focused on making London a safer place for women and girls. How will you, as a city councillor, work to ensure that this important pillar is implemented? With record numbers of femicides in Canada, what are the opportunities you see available to address gender-based violence by the City of London?
All right. Well, the gloves, I guess, are off now. This is one of the most pressing issues that I've actually noticed over the last little while. There are a lot of factors contributing to the gender-based violence, and without underlying the underlying issues, it's difficult to solve the problem. I would say that most of the mental health distress or alcohol, drug abuse, childhood dramas, perceived disloyalties, assimilations to females, and the wrong that in the past, sense of social rejection, mostly rooted in mental health, perceptions, and fears that dig way deep than we see. I'd almost guarantee this is a much bigger problem than what we actually see on the surface. And the reason I can actually say this is because there are a number of people that I have dealt with in my past, and some that I'm dealing with in my current. They are struggling in a situation where they fear violence. It is not easy for them. And all I can do is listen, because one of the things that I have noted on more than one occasion is that when somebody is in a situation where they fear, where they're scared, they need to know they're not alone. They need to know they have somebody to talk to, somebody who's not going to judge them, somebody who's going to be a listener. And that is sometimes one of the most important steps that we are going to be able to take. And as city councilors, as people, as human beings, we have to be prepared to stand and listen and just be there. I don't always know when a person is going through a situation, but I can tell you honestly that I listen and I watch And I always let them know that they can talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
I'm glad this question's here, that sometimes as we talk about violence in our community, it's easier to turn a blind eye to it than to address it. And when City Council of this term created the strategic pillar of creating a safe city for women and girls, I was pleased it was adopted, as I was the one who moved it. Making sure that we have adequate funding to address this, metrics to realize we need to measure what we're doing and make sure we're actually making progress, as this is definitely one of the aspects that we don't want simple virtual signaling for, saying it matters and we move about our day. Coming together with community partners, as I work with LOC, being the London Abused Women's Center, ANOVA, at Peloza, Safe Space, taking time out to go and see these first frontline workers and what they have to say, what they need, and if they see the needs are changing in our community. Having recently met with the London Police Services, I can assure you that the severity of the violence that they're reporting throughout the COVID pandemic has been greatly accelerating. On City Council, making sure our policies have a gender lens for our policies, and we look at how these decisions we're making are going to affect others in our community. Making sure we have complete neighborhoods with adequate street lighting. Making sure that women can report anonymously where they don't feel safe in the city and report their concerns, where we can look at them without them feeling targeted themselves, or potentially becoming more of an issue of abuse for themselves. And making sure that when there's opportunities and other women are raising their voice and those marginalized in our community are having protests, like we saw at Western when they didn't feel safe, events like Take Back the Night, that we're right there with them, regardless of our gender identity, making sure that their voices are heard and amplified. We have a safe community for all of us to live and thrive in. Thank you.
Thank you. What are some of the ways that we can encourage active transportation and public transit in London, and how much of a priority is this issue for you?
Thank you. Ideally, these two go hand in hand. And ideally, regardless if you drive a car, you use a bike. Even those who use a car usually have a bike and other modes of transportation they'll use to get around. So this one really does affect everyone, that active transportation, that it's realizing that our sidewalks are, I don't know, maybe safe walks, that it's a place that you can walk safely, that there's adequate lighting, and that those neighborhoods connect to other places for our sidewalk infrastructure. And those with mobility issues sometimes come down a sidewalk to find that it ends or the curb's not sufficient to actually cross the road as they need. As we do our planning applications, you'll see new builds in the city. If you're used to the old commercial plaza, the building will be set. There'll be the street, a large, expansive, dangerous parking lot if you're on foot, and then a building. Whereas we're now seeing the new buildings at the sidewalk to realize that if you've used public transit or active transportation to get there, it's a more welcoming streetscape with ideally some trees for shade as you're using it. As for the public transit, as I said earlier, we need frequent and reliable bus routes that run on time. If you're counting on those buses to get to work, social engagements, childcare, or to school yourself, that those bus routes need to be on time and you don't have an hour to buffer in before and after those appointments. We need to expand those areas to industrial areas for those needing jobs and work with employers to make that happen. And that those industrial areas also contain bike routes to get out there. And I'm hearing from some other area residents that they would like to know more about airport service as we've been expanding destinations, that they like to be able to just take transit to get there and leave their cars at home. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Well, I think this is a fantastic question because this is one that actually directly impacts me personally. And the way I say that is because of the fact that today I brought my significant other. Please don't stare at her, she gets mad at me. She works in a facility dealing with people with Alzheimer's. And she is in a situation where if she works an evening shift, there's no bus. 7 o'clock, buses stop. So she has to walk 45 minutes to get to an active bus stop. Now, that's, okay, nice summer day and everything else, but we want to talk about safety, community safety. How safe is it for her to have to walk 45 minutes in the middle of the night? So I end up picking her up most nights when I'm around. When my work doesn't take me away, I'm there to pick her up. But when I'm not, she's forced to use the Uber. She's forced to rely on rides. And this just goes to bring the importance of what our transportation system is all about. We talk about jobs, we talk about safety, we talk about some of these things that are important. We have a transit system that needs a retrofit. It needs to be working with our employer partners. We need to work with our residents. What do they need? We need to start looking at this, because if we make it easier to use, people will use it. People won't need a car all the time. And that's kind of the point. Fun story is the fact that one of the people helping me with my campaign went to college here 20 years ago. You know what she remembers the most about being here in this city? The transit system. So, it is a big priority for me, folks, and it is one of the most important because it does impact me directly as I know it impacts you.
Thank you. We'll do one more question from the box, and then we'll go to I've only got two pre-submitted questions, and then we'll go to audience questions.
All right.
The federal government's new National Housing Plan aims to cut chronic homelessness by 50% in the next 10 years. Currently, London faces critical challenges in providing safe, adequate, affordable housing. What role do you see the municipal government taking to help achieve the 50% reduction?
All right, great question. Loops right back around to the affordable housing. I think we've touched on that a few different times here. And the federal government has recognized the fact that there is an important issue here in Canada where people can't get affordable housing. I think it's going to be critical that the municipal governments help the federal government, ensuring that the proper funds are allocated to the projects that we will see the most benefit in our communities. What does the city need? The opportunities for improvement. We know where to best support our city. And I don't mean counselors, I mean you. You are the voice and the people of London that understand how to make it better. And I do this a lot because in my stores, when I have an issue, I don't necessarily turn around and go and say, I know all the answers. I find some of the best solutions to the problems that we have and that we face as a group on the ground. You have the answers. And as a result, we need to work with the federal government in ensuring the fact that your voices are heard and that you're in a situation that we're going to be able to identify London's strengths, where the companies are that we can spearhead these projects. Is there an opportunity for tax incentives or community helping itself to habitat for humanity type projects? Like I said before, the city knows what its current limitations are. We know what we need to do to fix the problem, but we need to work together to fix the problem. And when this starts coming around, you can bet your bottom dollar I'll be sitting there knocking on your door asking for your words. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Elizabeth?
Thank you. I think a key to this one is chronic homelessness. We talk about affordable housing, but the affordable housing rate is only about 20% off of the rent, which isn't affordable for most people of what we're seeing in town. The city has a rent geared to income program. It has a long wait list, as does our affordable housing wait list. This last city council has seen the largest investment of tax dollars into those programs. That's a response to our residents of when we're knocking on your doors and we hear this matters to you, you look at the budget and you see where we're putting our priorities into. As a child, I had lived experience with homeless myself. So I come with a different lens. I lived in housing early on in my adult life. And a key to that is, for me, not stigmatizing it, fighting the stigmas that we see, making sure in London, I've heard from residents that regardless if you're an individual or family, that you can feel safe where you live, that where you live is clean, and then you can be proud of where you are, and that people don't walk by your building and thinking, oh, that's them, that we're all just Londoners and we're equal. So for me, part of this is also seeing that we have the help that people need spread out through buildings across the city, that each end of the city has a responsibility to help build each other up and make the communities that we want to see. This city council has also built the first new social housing we've seen in 60 years. 2,000 units are getting upgrades as they need more funding, as the units were sitting vacant because they just needed more funding to get ready for residents to move in. And as winter is always perpetually coming, getting those units filled with families is paramount. And making sure we have provincial and federal funding opportunities and good relationships and we're ready to mobilize the money is imperative.
Thanks. Now we're going to go to the submitted audience questions. These were asked in advance and sent to the Urban League. Elizabeth, you will start with the response first, and then we'll go to Alex for this first question. First question, in what capacity have you been involved in municipal politics in the past? This is from Sharon D.
I was answering first?
Yeah.
Sorry, just.
Yeah.
I've been involved in municipal politics as someone who used to haggle our former city councilor, who we had Harold Usher for 18 years, and meeting with him over my concerns of what I need for my neighborhood, as I thought we needed some more trail enhancements, as I had a young family and our park in the area just wasn't adequate, and working with him at that time to see what we needed. As your current city councilor, doing the job to the best of my ability, out meeting with people and residents, realizing we all have different needs that we need. I chair the city's long-term care home, realizing that it's been a challenge during the pandemic and people feel isolated and alone. Also realizing I'm a mother and there's many children also feeling isolated and alone as we've all moved through the pandemic at the same time, but have all had very different experiences. I work with our school board trustees, as when there's community concerns that come up on school property, they're not mine, but we're partners in making sure that we can find a way to keep the street racers out of those parking lots at night and mitigate any crime opportunities throughout our neighborhood. And being a city councilor, working on the different agency boards and commissions, the library is one of them, as this is a great space that we're working in, and making sure that those spaces can serve our community needs. And realizing that the area is also serviced by our members of parliament, our members of provincial parliament, and having great open relationships with them, realizing when you bring your concerns forward and lay them on my desk, you don't care whose job it is to fix it, you just want it fixed. And it's my job to work together to get those answers for you and things delivered.
Thank you. Alex?
Well, unlike Elizabeth, I have not worked in municipal politics. However, back in 2014, I ran for mayor. Now, it was a very uneventful proposition. As you may have read in the newspaper and a few other places, I got 83 votes. And while it was kind of a little bit of a sad moment in my life, it gave me an opportunity to realize that there was more to it. And that in order for me to be a proper representative for the City of London, I needed to change who I was. I needed to step up to the plate. I needed to be better. I needed to become a better version of myself. So, while it may not be municipal politics, I ended up starting with a small, large-ish corporation here in London. I grew through the ranks. And I even turned around and actually became a district manager, managing 11 stores, over 300 people, budgets of $54 million. So while my track record in municipal politics is kind of short and maybe not that exciting, I used the opportunity to venture into municipal politics to seriously step up and try to make a better version of myself so that someday I could come back here to be a better representative for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question, and Alex, you'll start with this one. What is your strategy on public transportation? South London has its worst bus frequency compared to other neighborhoods, and this is from Hashmat J.
Well, again, we're back onto the public transit, folks. And I love the question because I think it is about taking action. I think it is about demanding action and working on action and achieving action. This is not something we can continue to talk about. I can ask everybody in the audience a little question here and you can respond. Does everybody remember Matt Brown? Yeah, everybody does, right? The London Plan, right? He sat there and he pushed that in front of all of us. And what was on that plan? Rapid transit, the BRT, right? Where's that? The last two councils, they've started some stuff. They've done a few things. Have they made the system better? They haven't made it worse, right? But at the end of the day, we need to start to realize the fact that the only way we are going to fix the problem is by focusing our attention on the problem. My plan is a simple one. I think we need to sit down with community leaders and partners, businesses, and ask them what kind of support do they need with the transit system? What about homeowners? Do they need better transit? Yep, clearly. So let's get together, let's sit down, let's have a conversation, let's make this better. Because again, if we just leave it, it's never gonna get better. It'll continue to drag its heels. And personally, I'm an individual of action, and that's what I focus my attention on. So let's make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Thank you. There has been roundtables with industry leaders saying what they need. I was there for those roundtables. As we're looking at the bus rapid transit plan, the south leg, being the Wellington leg of bus rapid transit, has been approved. It has the funding. And part of that construction is, I know how London does construction. We all love our roads perpetually being torn up. But underneath Wellington Road, the sewers in the end of that road are about 100 years old. Those roads are going to be dug up anyways. As this infrastructure is put back in, you might already see that the White Oaks Mall is doing revitalization at the front of their property. There's going to be some new restaurants out there for us to enjoy. And that's part of the vision of the London Plan coming to fruition and what we're going to see. If you use the buses, you're going to know in that area, there's no sidewalk in front of the mall. There's a bus stop on their side of the road. There is no sidewalk to get you there. I've seen moms pushing the stroller through the cow path on the side of the road, as it's also a busy road. Those will also be addressed when we do that build out for the bus rapid transit. As we talk specifically about the London Transit Commission, that is an arm's length board from City Hall. We cannot direct them directly to do anything. We ask that of them. We do have 2 council representatives on that board. When they do consultations with the community, they've come out to the community center here before when they're looking at changing the bus to the 93. The community was very clear that they wanted both bus routes, but that's not what we got, despite the fact we advocated for it. It's going to be adequate funding and giving them more funding if that's what it's going to take to get the service that we want here in the South End, or potentially bringing it in-house and realizing those routes are going to change as well with the service we're going to get when the bus rapid transit plan is built out, as that will be the spine, also with the park and ride in the South End to help alleviate some of the traffic coming into our end of the city.
Thank you. I think now we have time for some audience questions. Okay, so we'll start with the woman at the back, and if it's not directed to a particular candidate, I'll give the order that they'll speak, okay?
Right. Well, this is actually to Elizabeth and is directly related to what she just said. I realized with great surprise recently that the London Transit Commission is an arm-length organization and that City Council cannot direct them. And I would like to know why this is considered a good situation.
Yep, that's a fair question, absolutely. There's a lot of agency boards and commissions that councillors will sit on: Museum London, Library, Water Boards, Hydro, Western Fair, Convention Center. I think this is going to be a discussion for the next council of, I know as the ward councillor, I advocated for certain bus routes to stay the way they were. I wrote letters, our community association wrote letters. One of the councillors on the board spoke on our behalf, and it didn't make a difference. That is going to be a discussion of, do we want to bring it in-house? Is it better left as it is? There are some, as always, labor and union things also to be considered, but it's going to, we did it with one of the housing boards of, we had concerns, we brought stuff back in-house, or is it just more funding? And it's one of those things they report in, but it's absolutely fair questions. We just had the Civic Works Committee, their annual report in, and just looking, we have one of the lowest costs per ride that it costs the city to deliver, which sounds great, but then it's the question of great, it sounds good, but I'm hearing from residents that they're watching bus after bus after bus go by full, and then that's not reliable. And what are we going to do about it? So as we look at those numbers, and some numbers look good, it's really hearing about what the individual impact is, or when the schedules are late and they consider so much to be on time, and hearing from those moms of, my daycare charges me for every minute I'm late, and when my bus is 15 minutes every day late and I'm not getting any income coming in because I'm going back to school for training, this is another financial barrier to what I need. And if that's not a position you're in, we're just not aware of it. So having those conversations of really looking at those numbers as it is, alarm's length, and having that discussion of, is there a way to make it better, or do we need something more drastic of bringing all those operations back in, which I do believe will be a future discussion.
Alex, do you have anything to say?
Well, anybody who knows me, yes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I really do appreciate that question, because I'm surprised that we would allow somebody else who takes our money to turn around and basically dictate to us what we need for our residents. Let's face it. Yeah, okay, maybe it's going to cost us a little bit more. Okay. Do we not make more money if we put more people to work? If we service some of the factories that need buses? Why is this okay? And that's something that I don't understand. And I'm going to be very honest with all of you. As a person looking outside in, it's very easy for me to have an opinion, right? But the problem is the fact that, to me, it's simple common sense. If the system's broken, you elect people to fix it. So really, at the end of the day, you're putting your faith in the people who you elect to fix the system. How many questions do we have to have about transit? How many times do we have to sit here and talk about the issue? When are we going to actually do something about it? Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, yes, gentleman there.
Good day. We've been talking about builders and housing for the poor and that, and for the unfortunate and that, but I haven't heard any concrete plans on what actually you would be willing to tell a builder what's actually required. I mean, if I'm building an apartment that's got 100 units in it, and am I willing to tell the builder that I need 10 of those apartments, I need rent to be $1,000 a month? Am I willing to do that actually to protect the homeless and the people that are down in their luck? Or am I just going to go around and do all this sort of jelly talk?
Thank you. Alex, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I think this is a perfect example of the fact Recently, we approved a wonderful little tower right on Wellington and Bradley. This is something that's been a thorn in a lot of people's sides recently. They're not happy about it. And one of the things that even City Council was actually arguing over was the fact that, oh yeah, we're going to reduce the amount of affordable housing because we're scared to lose the development. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but we set things in motion for the purposes of basically protecting the people that need our help, the vulnerable. But that's okay. Builder comes along and says, I'm going to pull out and we're going to just change it. And at some point in time, we have to start looking at the fact that, you know what? Developers in this city have way too much of an opportunity to tell us and dictate what happens in City Council. A simple note. A few years ago, the provincial government turned around and made it illegal for corporations and unions to provide money for candidates. Now, it's not illegal for an individual of concern to turn around and have a donation, right? But how is it that 6, and I do mean 6, of our current sitting city councilors receive donations from developers' families? Some of them even actually have the developer's address on them, the head office. Okay. Maybe it's not wrong, just vision.
Thank you, Alex. Elizabeth?
Thank you for the question. Traditionally, the city had the 1989 plan, which has just been recently replaced with the London plan. And the government allowed us an opportunity to do bonusing, which was used to leverage those opportunities that you said of if you want to build a little bit more height and how the density worked, that we would need certain percentages of units. The government recently revoked, as of the end of last month, that opportunity to use that as a bonusing tool, which is why we saw such an influx of opportunities right before the end of it. And that's how we were getting hundreds of units a year coming into the city's supply, which were spread out across the city in multiple neighborhoods. So it wasn't that building, and the city didn't have to own and run that building. It was just part of our housing stock for years to come as they went through the market. That's going to be a discussion of how to move forward with that. We haven't even had a planning cycle yet come forward of the government's new ideas of charts and how they want to scales of how they're hoping to do things. I know some people have different views on developers, and absolutely there's some from out of town coming to London because it's an economic opportunity. Never heard of them before. They've never built anything here from before. One of those developers on Southdale gave multiple units that they didn't have to give straight up to the city and just said, we recognize this is our first build. Your councilors told us about the problem and happy to give these to the area of Ward 12. That was wonderful and set the new bar of maybe what we could be expecting from other developers. Other developers in the city have stepped up with other projects in addition to some housing units. There's a new stage being built in White Oaks Park. The material's starting to be piled up. That's a developer who ended up growing up in our community, heard about a need in the community and stepping up. There's also going to be park upgrades right beside Fanshawe South Campus, as a developer heard from our students that go there of things they'd like to see in the park, and we're interested in partnering with them based on community and feedback.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir, the gentleman back there.
Yeah, this is,
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mind standing and maybe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. This is specifically a question to you, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your explanation of bonusing. And could you please just reiterate that so we can get that across?
Absolutely, thank you. As I said, it's gone now. But it was a formula that they had laid out that if you didn't have area around your building, especially if you're doing infill to allow for the green space and whatnot that the London plan called for, that if you weren't meeting all the requirements, there was an option that staff could recommend to council of allowing you to do the density in the builds with giving so much back in other terms, which was normally affordable housing to the community to be wrapped in. That's now gone as of the end of last month, but that was a tool that the city was using to come up with more units in other buildings that we didn't have to buy, maintain, and stock that was just given there. So that's how that one worked. The government has a new plan that will start being implemented this month. We haven't seen it yet at council being used yet through the Planning and Environment Committee, but waiting to see how that one goes and what we can do with the new tools that have been allowed for us, recognizing municipally, I think the most exciting level of government. I'm a little bit biased, but the other levels dictate to us a lot of the times the tools that we have at our disposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, okay, back.
So I want to direct the question to Elizabeth. She's talking about all this affordable housing. She talked about, I believe, working on units, and they were going to give us so many affordable houses, affordable units. But I want concrete numbers. I mean, this is what I call jelly talk. It doesn't
Yep.
just going around and around and around. You have to be able to say to the person, this is what we want. If you don't, then, and you go through all these schemes and that, it's not going to get you anywhere. So, do you have any hard concrete numbers for us?
I'll use the example of the building that Alex referenced at Wellington. You don't want that example.
I want a concrete answer. Can I have a building in Wellington? How many portable units are going to be?
Yeah, there's going to be 63, and they did up the number of bedrooms within those units. So the city is getting a higher mix of 3-bedroom units, as originally their plans were just 1 and 2s, and pushed them to actually put 3-bedroom units into their building, period, as this is an inclusive neighborhood that's great for families. And then they gave a larger portion of the 3s to the city, which actually exceeded the number of bedrooms we were going to get, but a lower number of units, because there's going to be more family spaces available.
What does that cost to this taxpayer?
The cost of the taxpayer, so that the affordable units don't cost us anything. They would just have given up green space and other things. Essentially, any cost of the taxpayer is really a benefit, as the more people we have living in London, the greater the tax base is to spread across the taxes we need to operate the city. So the more residents we have.
Not if they're in affordable housing.
I think we're kind of confusing different things. Affordable housing, or are you talking sociable housing?
Affordable units, whether in apartments or houses.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
There's a
the
difference.
developers and the property owners are still going to pay rent of those units into the city. So I'm not so sure if they're really even getting much break on how the tax portion goes. I assume it's still so they're paying $1,000 versus the $1,100. Like, it's going to be like, is your question of people who have rent get your to income not pulling their weight in the city and paying enough taxes? Okay.
Perhaps you can continue that discussion after this.
I didn't know.
So-
Sorry, I didn't know
Yeah.
if Alex.
Alex,
wanted to have
did you
it.
want to add to that?
No, I've started to learn about the tax incentives or the green space stuff that they already give us anyways, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And the woman in the front here, sorry about that.
Well, I'm interested in the green bin program, and I'm just wondering how it'll work, and I'm wondering where these bins are gonna be dumped.
Is that for Elizabeth?
Well,
You-
I guess Elizabeth.
And then-
There.
She'd be more opted to be able to answer that one. I mean,
Yeah. So your green bins, the city still has a website up, and it's Get Involved London, and they're still collecting feedback on green bins of how you want it implemented. The only thing that really seems clear is it's going to be once a week pickup, same day every week. And your green bins are going to be the organic material that's decaying in your garbage. Where it's going to go, realizing the landfill's also in Ward 12, is still up for debate. Our lovely green bin compost stuff that we have collected will be bid on from other enterprises to see who gets the contract to collect it and process that. What's still up for consideration is what's going to actually go into your green bins. Other cities allow pet waste. We absolutely can, as London has, I think, the highest ratio of pets in Ontario. We really love our pets. But once we allow pet waste in it, the grade of compost goes down a level. So it's going to be seeing what residents want and then what the market's going to dictate for people bidding to take our compost away. And what's still up for consideration is if it's just going to be a really large bin or if you're going to get smaller bins for your house to fill up to put out. And then ideally, your actual garbage pickup will be every 2 weeks because that should not contain really any organic material and shouldn't be creating that odor and raccoon attractiveness.
Alex, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of back in the days in 2014 when I ran for mayor. We were talking about this then, and we continue to talk about it. Again, we are up for review. We're reviewing more stuff. Folks, we've got to start giving some action. You want your green bin? Let's work on getting a green bin. We have to start giving you some action. We can't continue to sit there and have meetings about meetings about meetings. I work in a corporation where every other day we have a meeting. To have a meeting to decide what we're going to have for lunch about the meeting that we're going to actually have 2 weeks from now. Like, why do we continue to have all these meetings? You want green bins, am I correct?
Well, I want to know where the green bin's going to be dumped because this ward already has a lot of garbage things in it.
For sure.
And so I fear that they're going to put the green bin in here and it's not going to be nice.
No.
The green
And
bin dumping.
yeah.
So, you know, we've got a lot of things here in this ward that are very unpleasant to deal with, especially if you live in the south end.
Yep. No, I agree.
I want to know how it's going to work. I think if it's going to be good, it should be right in Victoria Park where everybody can see the benefits of it.
Okay. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as I said, we've got to stop talking about this stuff 8 years later and having the same conversation over and over again. Maybe it's a little different and where we're actually going to be dumping it, for sure. I didn't hear that one before. But let's start doing some stuff. Let's get it done. These are the things that concern people. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other audience
Sorry,
questions?
question. As I hasn't used up my full 2 minutes and I had a
Okay.
brief rebuttal, are we allowed to add on information? I don't know. I was just going to tell her
Sure.
the programming timeline of
Yeah.
Green Bins does have the money approved by council for the funding of it. It was going to roll out as a pilot project to areas of Lambeth. Just there's a supply issue with the chassis for the actual trucks that we've purchased, and that's the delay. So 2023, we'll see the pilot project roll out, and then it's going to roll into the citywide expansion with the contracts being announced of who's going to bid and get, which I don't have access to. And that's where we're at, just with the delay. They just didn't want to leave a large gap between the pilot project and implementation for cost effectiveness.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, the gentleman in the green.
My question is relating with housing, but the housing not for ordinary people, for nursing housing. Because if you need some, for me, I am nursing my wife, and sometimes I need to go out of town for 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month for a special reason, but I can't go. I'm stuck here since 4 years now, since before the pandemic, and I can't go out. I can't visit my family, I can't go and do somewhere else. So what I'm looking for, when I try to call the nursing homes, I have to apply 1 year before I decided to go in such a date, because they are full. And if I try to hire a nurse to come to my house, I'll pay a lot of money for that. I cannot afford it. So that's an issue that needs to be raised for our council, to find some nursing houses just for temporary periods, not only for living at all. And I have to wait until someone in the nursing house died and they found someone.
Yes, the long-term care home issue is a problem. So, Alex, do you want to tackle that kind of a question?
I will let it to Elizabeth first.
Oh, okay. Elizabeth, do you want to, because that's a good question. Thank you, sir.
It is, and recognizing our majority of our population is older and getting to the age that if you're middle-aged, you're caring for an elder, or you're getting there yourself and troubling with care. As the chair of the long-term care home in London, that's our municipally run care home, I can speak to how that one runs. The other for-profit ones, I know they have wait lists as well. It's about a 2-year wait list right now if you need an elder going in for care. So if you're getting there, please get on a wait list. They did offer adult day programs, which shut down during COVID, and they also offered the respite beds, which you're looking for your loved one. And with the government protocols during COVID, a lot of those things did shut down as they just had such barriers on people coming in and out of that home, recognizing some of those residents were vaccinated, some were not, and just really making sure that that's their home and their health and safety was protected first and paramount. It is a long list for those beds. I can certainly ask through Dearness, as that's not normally a question we have coming up at our normal meetings, of what the wait list is for the respite beds and what we're seeing. But it is a problem, especially if you don't have others around or siblings who can come and go and help take care of your elders for you, or your loved ones, that it is a barrier. I knew that people too were having problems with working, and even the adult day programming shutting down as some people had Alzheimer's and needed someone to be able to look after them. And those people, for the most part, ended up having problems in the workplace or having to leave the workplace as those social supports were no longer available. So thank you for that question and raising that need within our community.
Thank you. Alex?
Well, I definitely understand the need. My girlfriend works in the field. She talks about the fact of the issues that they have for available beds, the issue that she has with a lot of the situations going on in the industry right now. The aging population, we're getting older. All of us are. And City Council needs to take that into consideration. We do. We have a pretty good facility, the Dearness facility. City run. So that would be one of the things that I would definitely be trying to look at, especially because of the fact that it is important to you. I can't give you any concrete answers, but I can definitely tell you that I can get you some answers, give you a timeline, give you an idea, at the very least. Okay.
Thank you. Now, are there any new questions? Anybody want to ask a new question? No, I'm just going to see if there's someone else. Okay, if you can ask your question, and that will be the last question for the day.
Thank you. This is something that's been bothering me for a long time. The lack of extension of hours for the pools, the summer pools, and how early they shut down in the spring, in the fall. And often very hot days. The Silverwood pool in particular is almost never or rarely open. And I believe that it's not that marginally more extra cost to add hours to the pools. And I think the city should be doing that. Anybody who's talking environmental stuff and can't keep the pools open, it's not serious as far as I'm concerned. So actually that's not a question unless you have something to say about the pool issue.
Yeah, I will just say that we don't have any outdoor pools immediately within Ward 12.
You don't? Okay.
No, we just have the South London Community Center, the indoor one. I know this year the Thames pool shut down because there was some immediate repairs they had to do, and people were sad, obviously, because they had stuff booked, and it's a great pool. Silverwood, myself, I'm not too familiar with, but I know in the past that the city has had a problem finding trained lifeguards that would allow us to keep the pools open into other hours, even though the community need and desire was there. So without a lifeguard, we can't operate it. So shutting it down, I know some of the conservation authorities have had problems as well, and they just removed the lifeguards and people did their own thing, which allowed their pools to stay open this last summer, as I also serve on a conservation authority board. But the city pools, we don't have that opportunity. So we have to have a lifeguard there, which if we can't staff it, we have to close it. There will be time to talk to the candidates after. Alex, did you want to add anything to the pool question?
Really, honestly, I don't think that there's much more to say. I mean, unfortunately, there is a labor shortage. This is something I think we all know all too well.
For 5 or 10 years.
5 or 10 years, that seems excessive. And I definitely would feel your pain on that one, because ultimately, I don't understand why we would do that. If there's a demand, but that goes back to the fact of why I'm running in the first place. I'm running because I don't believe that City Hall listens to the interests of the people that are sitting here in this room. And it's time that they get heard.
Thank you. Now we're going to have our closing statements from each candidate. We'll start with the same order that we started with at the beginning. So Elizabeth, you'll go first, and then Alex, you'll go second.
Thank you to the organizers, and to Urban League and their volunteers who have come to be with us today, and realizing they've done many debates throughout the city as this is happening citywide for resident engagement. To the viewers and voters and residents, regardless if they can vote or not, they're still Londoners, and we still deliver as a city over 100 services that they need to function in their days. Thank you for taking the time to attend in person today. For those who watch it at home later, and please, the Rogers recording is available later, and just share it, even if your neighbors can watch it and become informed. For those who step up to run, Alex, thank you. And to our third person who did not join today, it's important to have candidates come up to run regardless of your viewpoints, just to make sure we have those community conversations, realizing everyone feels they have a place and an equal opportunity to serve as an elected official. To our loved ones at home who come out and fill our back row, maybe with buttons, reminding you that you're loved. And for those who feed us at home, and for our volunteers who support us, for those on our campaigns who take time to knock doors with us, make buttons, and donate. Thank you to all those. As municipally, we don't have parties behind us, and it really is a nice grassroots feeling of meeting with neighbors and trying to mobilize to serve our communities the best way that we can. I've been honored to serve on City Council for the last 4 years for you, taking every opportunity I can to be on agency boards and commissions that you told me matter to you, from clean drinking water to library services and arts and culture. I have served as committee chair, as voted on by my fellow councillors. I'm the City of London's budget chair, chairing a $1.2 billion conversation. As we talk about bridge building and having those connections with colleagues to make sure you can get things done and have your voices heard. And that's what I want to continue to do for you as your ward councillor, if re-elected on October 24th. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Alex?
Well, I want to start by saying thank you to my family, my friends, and the people that support me. I wouldn't be able to sit here today if it was not for them. They are the reason that I'm actually running, because I believe I can make a difference. And not just believe, I know I can make a difference. Because if you put all the people behind Ward 12 and you put them behind me and say, let's go, I'm in. There is nothing I won't do. There is no challenge I will not take on. And I will continue to push forward what is important to you. Because when I look at the fact of the honor of being a counselor, it would be an honor for me. And I can tell you honestly that no matter what, if I had my title in there and I became a chairperson of this and did all this other stuff in council, Ward 12 counselor would always be the first thing up on that list, because I got voted in by the people of Ward 12. To me, that is the most important thing. Don't get me wrong, not knocking it. But we have to understand, my goal is a simple one. I want to treat you with respect, with integrity, and utmostly with honesty. I'm a pretty simple guy. I get up in the morning, I go to work. I give it 110% every single day. And that is a skill set that I want to bring to you, to the City of London, and to our future. So hopefully October 24th, you can find it, you can get there, and vote Alex May. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming this afternoon. There will be time for you to speak to the counselors after this, and of course the lovely candidates that are running for the school board. They'll be here for a little while as well, so please continue the conversation after. Have a wonderful evening and get home safely. Thank you.
Thank you.